How y'all doing? Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. So it looks like we have a quorum. I did include Councilmember Mendoza in the text, but he might just be running late. I know with work, it can be a little rough these days.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to respect everyone's time so we can get started and call today's work session to order for the budget meeting for Monday, May 17th. And with that, the first item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Again, the focus is budget planning. So is there a motion to approve the agenda? I'm sorry, the boxes went from the top to the side. Councilmember Rout, did you have your hand raised?
No, ma'am.
No, okay, it switched on me and went down. So
I'm sorry, Mary.
Weird. Okay, I guess that was because you were bringing it up, but is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Moved by Councilmember Rout. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Blunt. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Tonelli, I will turn it over to you to start us off with, there was a question presented last time with respect to the town clerk budget, and then walk us through the new business items, which are the remaining department budgets.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Council, Chief, and hopefully lots of people watching, lots of interested residents and business owners, because this budget reflects our level of service to the town for next fiscal year. And we always say we are a service industry, so we provide a service to our residents. So hopefully spread the word. We get some good input here in the budget. Where we left off last time, we started the May 3rd budget session where we went through the revenues and got through the mayor and council budget. And at the work session last week, we went through a couple other departments, I think, and we left off with the town administrator and left off with the town clerk budget. And I'm going to go ahead and share the budget now. We'll pick back up at the town clerk budget. And please let me know if you can see everything okay, because I'm seeing it a little bit different here.
Yes.
Okay.
So the nice thing is this is zoomed in a little bit more than I believe it was the last time.
Yeah. It looks better this time too, for some reason, when it comes up. So we went through the revenues budget. And this is this is what's shared in our e-blast and will be on our new website as well soon. So I just want everybody to just see this again. It goes to the summary budget, which is a summary of the revenues, summary of the departmental budgets, actuals through the third quarter, current year budget, percentage of budget used this fiscal year, next year's budget in the blue column, an increase or decrease in percentages from the FY22 budget to the FY21 budget. Quick recap. And then it goes into detail the revenues. And we go down, and then we get into the departmental budgets. And same format, third quarter actual versus current year budget, percentage expended of the current year, and projected FY22 budget. So we went through a town administrator, and we left off a town clerk. Can everybody see that okay still, or is that be zoomed in a little bit more?
I think it looks pretty good. I don't see any hands raised that it doesn't
Okay.
visible.
So we left off, I think we went through, there was some question about professional development, I believe, last time in the town clerk budget. We went through the, well, let's just recap real quick. The compensation, total increase, colon merit, that's a placeholder for now. I'm not sure which direction council wants to go, but I did a 2 and 2, 2% COLA, 2% merit. Again, it's a placeholder, and that goes through all the departments. So that's why it was an increased total of 4% overall. It's actually a little bit more up here because we added the summer interns back in. So that's why it's 5% instead of 4%. But we left off at professional development, I believe. There's some discussion about that. And Councilmember Lundy, I think you had some questions about that.
Yes, and just some questions and statements. So I thank you so much, Mr. Tinelli. Thank you. Mayor James, the floor.
Yes, please go ahead, Councilmember Lundy.
So, yes, so I did receive some position description and a job description for, I had requested for just the front office to help me kind of gauge the budget for the town clerk with respect to under the other general and administrative section. And so after receiving those from the acting town administrator, Chief Collington, via Mr. Tinelli, I had some questions. And so for the town treasurer, town administrator, I'll get to that. And the town receptionist and the finance clerk, all of those were position descriptions that identified the position description elements were identified along with the effective dates of those. However, I received a job description for the position of the marketing / events coordinator, and the position description elements were not identified, nor was it dated. And then at the end of that language, it stated that please submit your letter of interest and resume to Debbie Sandlin, town administrator, to her email address by Monday, October the 8th, 2018. So I was kind of baffled by that because I believe that position was filled prior to 2018. Only because I came in in 2000 and something 17 or 18 or what have you. But anyway, so I was kind of I was kind of confused by what I received because it was consistency with the other position description, but there was not consistency with the marketing / event coordinator's position. So I wanted to ask my first question. I have other questions. I wanted to ask Mr. Tinelli, do we have a position description for that particular position?
Sure,
instead
we
of
do.
a job announcement?
I'm sure we do somewhere, yes.
And what date did that role take place? Did that person come on in that position?
We had a couple people in that position over since it was established, I think, back in FY17, I want to say. Okay,
so currently, for the current position, the current role being filled, when was that position filled?
I could tell you in like 1 minute.
Okay, so while you're looking up that, then my other question was, I didn't see a, well, in relationship to that, I want to move that the organizational chart for the Bladensburg town government reflect the actual position titles. Because I had asked a question in the last budget meeting, was because I saw inconsistency with the receptionist versus secretary. And so after receiving the position description for that role, it did list position as a town receptionist. So for the org chart on page 15, that's good for that receptionist, because now, because we didn't know whether it was a secretary or a receptionist, so it is a receptionist. For the marketing specialist, once you identify the PD, because what I received for the job announcement said marketing events / coordinator. So we need to be clear, is it a marketing specialist? What is that title? And also I received a PD for the finance clerk. Here it says accounting assistant. So that's that. So in sticking with the positions here on the org chart, I didn't know what does it mean by volunteers and interns what are those positions? What roles are those and what departments? I see the department is under the front office staff.
Mhm.
So who are these people?
This goes back to our summer youth program, and we took on interns. Chief, I think there's a couple that were in the police department side, and historically we had a couple here in the front office side, one at the front office and one to assist the marketing specialist or coordinator, and that was a 6-week program.
Okay.
And Mr. Tonelli, in addition, I believe Councilmember Lundy had an intern as well.
Well, he
Was
wasn't
that
paid.
2018?
Yeah, he wasn't paid through the town. He was volunteer because I was told we didn't have any more money for that position.
Okay. So, but I think, Mr. Tonelli, you were turning it over to Chief Collington as well. Chief, did you want to chime in on the PD side?
Yes, we had partnered with the Summer Youth Enrichment Program,
That's what it is, yeah.
and we had one volunteer last year. I'm sorry, not last year, in 2019.
Mhm.
We had a young lady, and then we had one volunteer, unpaid, work in the COPS office with the CAT team under Miss Courtney Brooks.
Thank you, Chief. And I see a hand from Councilmember Rout.
Thank you, Mayor James. So I too had just some
I'm not finished,
concern.
council member.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Lundy. I wanted, since we were on this section instead of discussion,
Yeah, that's
points,
good.
just to
Go ahead.
make sure we allow everyone to chime in.
No
Councilmember
problem
Rout.
with that.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Lundy. Thank you,
No
Mayor
problem.
James. I too saw the volunteer/interns. I do know that we have paid volunteer positions. That definitely helps us fill vacancies. Like, let's say, for instance, an employee is on leave for an extended period of time. They do cover the front desk. And I think that's helpful and beneficial for our front office staff. So I would support keeping a paid line item for our volunteers. As it relates to our interns, I do know that the SYEP program that we've used in the past sustains itself as it relates to paying interns, paying those young people through the county program. And I would like to recommend that if we are going to have youth interns, that they're not taken out of our budget as it relates to the town of Bladensburg, that we enroll in the SYEP program as a site. Now, we can have a site in Public Works, we can have a site in a front office that each of our administrations can be a designated site, and the supervisor can supervise that young person and they can get paid through the SYEP program, which is at no cost to the town of Bladensburg. But I am in support of the volunteers continuing to be paid out of our standard operating budget for the fiscal year. I yield back.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. And then Councilmember Lundy, I want to come back to you because I understand you had additional comments and questions.
Yes.
And I do want to, Councilmember Lundy, out of respect for the item that you did raise, which is about the org chart and updating that. I'm not disputing that. I think you raised some valid points, but just know that tonight, because it's more budget work session focus, we couldn't make any formal votes on that. We probably should bring that, though, to the work session for June to clarify, as you mentioned before, job description titles match up with the actual org chart. So again, I don't want, I think it's valid, but it's just for tonight's purpose, this is budget work session focus. So I just want to make sure that we're sticking with the advertised agenda, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mayor James. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, before we pass anything final, we want to make sure everything is accurate. So yeah, I definitely agree with that position. With respect to the training, professional development. So what I had did was to try to gauge how much, how would the FY22 budget look like? Because remember, I couldn't really gauge what it would look like for training. So what I did was I kind of figured out, I wanted to know what formula was used, but all I did was divide. I just divided and I want to be clear with Mr. Tonelli. So the 4 front office staff would be town clerk, the receptionist, the volunteers and interns, and the marketing event coordinator. That would be 4 positions, or do I include I don't include the finance clerk in that for that budget item, correct?
Are you trying to include just the administrative departments?
Well,
Is that
it
what
says
you're-
town office / administration, so that would be is that the town clerk, receptionist, the interns, and the marketing? I'm trying to see who would use that professional development budget.
Myself, accounting assistant. So, because,
Everybody.
well, I mean, everybody has a budget line item for.
Mr. Tonelli, can I jump in? So
Sure.
the answer to that question
Thank you.
is this is the town clerk budget. Therefore,
Right.
the people covered under this would be the marketing
I'm
specialist,
sorry. Yes.
the town
Okay.
clerk, and our receptionist. So those 3 positions
Thank
would
you.
share that budgeted amount. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's what I was
Okay.
wanting to get
I'm
clarified.
sorry. Okay. I misunderstood.
That's okay. I figured that's where she
Thanks for jumping in on that one.
No
Yeah, I thought I was
problem.
clear. Okay, and then and then I don't see this even as a line item under this, but I don't know where it would go, but so that it's not here, but I guess it would be all included in this training and professional development. Does the town do tuition reimbursement for training, education for full or part-time employees?
Yes.
Okay, so where would that be captured in the budget per departments? What line item?
Professional development, that hasn't come up in the past with the town clerk budget. That's why I kept the professional development there at $4,000. Historically, this hasn't been used. We're trying to, of course, we want people to constantly improve themselves. But as you can see, this budget has not been used this current fiscal year. Well, this current fiscal year with COVID and everything, there's no real, people went to the online and didn't do the in-house conferences and trainings. But if we had a history of tuition reimbursement, I would have put that in there and split the budget up with it.
Okay, so that's.
It's kind of like professional development and tuition reimbursement. Sometimes they get a little bit, I don't want to say commingled, but it could be tuition reimbursement or it could be professional development. I mean, tuition reimbursement should just be for classes. Professional development should be for seminars, conferences, and associated travel with that. Actually, back up, I put the travel out separate from professional development now. So, but if there's a history of tuition reimbursement, try to keep that in there, but there hasn't been. But I mean, there's a good amount in there, but it just hasn't been utilized over the years.
Okay, when you say
Mr. Tonelli, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lundy, can I just ask a follow-up? Because under what you said, Mr. Tonelli, is it more so employee driven? So for instance, if an administrative staff member said, hey, I'm going back to school, would like to get approval from the town administrator for tuition reimbursement, then it comes out of that administrative budget. Because I'm noticing and looking back, and this is going back to this time last year, the documents from that budget planning process, I did not see anything under tuition reimbursement for the town clerk budget. But if I recall correctly, I believe there was something under the town administrator. Yes, there was 6110, the line item. So is it just a matter of, just so the council is understanding, that if a staff member wants to go back to school, they talk to their manager or supervisor and they're approved, for tuition reimbursement per our policy, and then we go from there. So that, let's say someone makes that request in June 2021, then that supervisor or department head knows they need to make us, the town council, aware that, hey, Keisha James in the admin office is going back to school and we request tuition reimbursement for FY22. Is that how it works, basically upon request?
Yes.
Versus just putting it
Yes.
in every
Yeah.
year and having it not utilized?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's, but, we also put something in there to incentivize, to get folks to, in case something does come up, to give them
Thank
the
you.
opportunity for that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear. Councilmember Lundy, thank you for
Yes.
your patience while I jumped in there. I just wanted
No
to make sure I
problem.
understood. I'm going back to you.
All right, fabulous. So, yes, and so that brings me to my next point. So, per our policy, and if Mr. Tonelli can share the tuition reimbursement policy, that would be nice to the mayor and council if you could share that. Because I'm wondering, are we allowing up to 75%, or because I did some research on this and found out what Maryland allows. And so I wanted to know what our policy, if we have a policy, and what does our policy say about how much we allow as respects to tuition reimbursement. So I want to know that. And then also to follow up with you, old business, I will be following with you to get that PD for that particular marketing events coordinator position, the actual PD with the official date. So I wanted to make sure you had that note it down.
Perfect. And so, Mr. Tonelli, if you could follow up when you send over the position description for the marketing position, if you could also share the policy with us for the sake of time. I don't want you to try to locate it now because we do have.
I believe it's in the personnel manual.
I think so too. If I can find it first, I'll forward it and just let you know that I've shared it. But I do want to make sure, because it's 5:55, we jump into the remaining budgets, because the police department, I know, is the most lengthy. I want to ensure we have enough time to get into some of the major line items there.
So, okay, so thank you, Mayor James. So we may have to do them separate, but anyway, so I yield back. I'm good right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Tonelli.
Okay, give me 1 minute now. I gotta catch up here.
Yep, and I'm actually gonna grab that because I have a copy of it while Mr. Tonelli moves on, and try to screenshot it and send it over to you all.
Okay, finance budget. Finance is myself and accounting assistant. And the budget here includes the compensation, is regular pay, includes the COLA and merit. But the reason why it increased is my accounting assistant will be retiring at some point, most likely midway or so through the fiscal year. And there's going to be an accrued leave payout as well. So I'm trying to capture that as well. Accrued leave payout is unused sick time up to the policy, and unused annual leave as well. And that's an expense, and that's something that is earned, not taken, but have to capture that expense. When we've had other retirements, it's usually been the police department or it's been the town clerk, where we could absorb those because there's been a vacancy on another side. But with only 2 people in this department, it's going to show. So that's why the compensation increased there. And FICA increases by the same percent. Pension cost, this is the capturing the admin fees charged by the state retirement pension plan. It's only like $1,500 a quarter. It's $6,000 on top of the 7% that the employees pay in and the town pays in. So the total increase for compensation is 10%, and a big chunk of that is for estimated retirement payout if the accounting clerk leaves. I don't want to get into detail on the amounts because that is a, personnel, but general and administrative, here we go with the tuition reimbursement, professional development. This tuition reimbursement is for 2 grad classes. Actually, that could be for 3 if I can get into a deal that they are offering, because I guess the online place, I'm not sure, but it looks like some of them are running a special if you jump on it. And my school right now have to do some negotiation with. Professional development, I decreased that by $2,000. because of I wasn't sure about the conferences this year. With the virtual conferences, they are a lot cheaper, but now everything's opening back up. So I don't know if that's a good idea or not. My main conference, or the main conference I go to, is the Maryland Government Finance Officers Association. They do quarterly conferences and a 3 or 4 day long summer conference. And I decreased the travel down there at the bottom by $2,000 too, to offset the decrease in the professional development and the hotel lodging too, because if it's at the same place, I can stay at no cost to the town. Payroll service, this is a valuable service. And I can't believe we get it for only $6,000 a year for the amount of employees and transactions that we have with the town. With the tax filings, tax payments, garnishments, wage reporting, everything is handled by our payroll company. And that is a very good deal. Unlimited reports. I would never bring it in-house because it's so cheap, and that's all they do. I mean, they're experts in it, and they're a good company, and we've been with them for a while, and they can do a lot with payroll. A lot more than if we did in-house. We still do all the front end work though. It's just the processing, the printing and follow up, direct deposits, everything else. Transfers. They pick up anything that changed drastically. Computer, $1,500, went up from $1,000. This is for parts, computer parts. Jen's printer is getting ready to go. She really needs a dedicated printer in that department. It's good 8 years old, but hopefully when we get a new copier here, it can pick that up. But this covers for any, just in case a replacement is needed. Software contract. This is for, I didn't put in this line item. It's $1,300 for QuickBooks, and also the balance of $4,700. I'm looking at a scanning software that we can scan all the documents, so we don't have to store anything. Everything will be online, searchable, and I've been talking with them for a couple of years. So everything will be scanned online, stored in a data vault. So audits are easier to do. Any backup information, want to go to files and pull anything out. It's a really good system and something we should have went to for a while. So it's nice to have the paper. It's nice to have the paper backup, but at the same time, it's just so much easier. I mean, just pulling back something off of just searching professional development and pull down everything professional development, open the document up. And that's a relatively inexpensive service. And as our transactions increase, it's a really nice service to have. Audit, I did increase this. Our annual audit is $12,000 a year. Our single audit is additional $5,000 a year. A single audit meaning if you have more than $750,000 of federal funds, and with the anticipated money coming down from the COVID Relief Act, we're going to need that extra $5,000 and also put in a little bit more just in case we need some accounting support or guidance to get us through the federal language and everything, to make sure we're doing everything right in our accounting, internally in our accounting system and by the single audit. And that's just in case, because we're talking about a lot of federal funds there, almost $8 million. Councilmember Rao?
Mayor James, Mayor.
Yes, please go ahead. I'm sorry. I was noting that about the additional support that we're going to need because of the federal funding. But I'm sorry, Councilmember Rao, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Mayor James, Mr. Tonelli. Since we did not get to the fiscal, we had asked, members of the council had asked for a forensic audit. And so that did not take place this fiscal year that we're currently in. Do you happen to know how much of a forensic audit may even cost us, as it relates to when I did my research, companies that we had asked, they said that they don't even do those types of audits. That's companies that we were recommended from the Municipal League of Maryland, as I had suggested that the town council break that list up. And so I went on ahead and did my 4 that I had asked, that I had assigned, I had suggested that we assign to each other. But I would like to see the forensic audit in this budget as a budgeted line item for possibly next fiscal year. We could possibly get that done. Maybe that can be something that the new town administrator take on when they are hired. Yield back.
And what's the forensic audit scope of work?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Councilmember Rout?
Oh, yes, I would like your expertise would be able to definitely lead us in that initiative. So I would be asking you that as the town treasurer.
Okay. In my business, I used to do forensic audits. It was usually centered around something that, wasn't right. I had to come in after hours to, and go through the books. There's certain things you look for. It's usually a pretty narrow scope that you're trying to find something, just find any accounting irregularities. So when I hear forensic audit, the hairs on the back of my neck perk up because, it's surprising to me because, because we just passed our last audit and we got a clean audit every year since I've been here. So there's something, I guess I'm a little bit.
Oh, it was you. I think at that time you were the acting town administrator when members of the town council made that request. So I think what we should do is we should go back and look at our minutes and understand the discussion. I think it was regarding resources. If my memory serves me correct, our assets, looking at if they're properly being used, since there was lots of feedback as it relates to our assets, how they are being used, our bills in, bills out, collecting of revenue. It was looking at, if my memory serves me correct, but I would like to justify that by taking a look at our minutes as we discuss, so that I'm not, speaking out of turn.
Okay. As I think the auditor said last time, they do testing. We send them everything. I send them my whole accounting file, and they pull samples, and we send testing. And that's one of the reasons why I want to go to this scanning software. So it's a lot easier to have everything in here and send it to the auditor, because then right now we're going back through files, making copies, scanning them, and sending them to the auditor. But they give us hundreds of items, samples, testing from the transactional base when it comes in, who approves it, the check number matches up to what's in the system, matches up to what's on the bank rec, and make sure the checks have all been signed, and make sure the check requests have been signed. Those are things they check on the accounts payable side, accounts receivable side, invoicing, backup, that it's cleared to bank. On payroll side, and make sure everything's signed with payroll, make sure transactions are approved, it clears the bank, and all the individual transactions, direct deposits, and everything have gone through. So they do a lot of testing. And actually I just sent them my accounting file just after our meeting, complete accounting file for them to start pulling testing, because I want to get a jump on the FY22 audit. So I'm trying to get them in here earlier. As soon as we wrap up the FY21 audit, to get them in here. Now, I don't know if you're looking at more of an operational audit to see, if our assets, you're talking about assets being used. Now
it's not just me, it's other members of the town council.
Okay.
I just wanted, don't make this a Jocelyn Councilmember Rout thing.
No,
it was consensus amongst the town council. There was agreement amongst the town council that a forensic audit would be conducted. And so since it wasn't budgeted for, maybe that was the reason why it did not take place. And so that's why I'm asking if your experience is doing forensic audits. I had 2 questions. How much would that cost? And can we put that cost into the audit line item so that we can release a RFP so that we can be able to do that?
Let me see.
And thank you, Councilmember Rout. I did pull up the last email that we had on that, and I won't get into all of it because this was a closed session discussion. So we can't share everything, but the big picture, as was stated, was just to have an objective view beyond the auditor to look at a variety of things. And so I do want to clarify, because this is a public meeting. Again, I can't go into all the closed session items, but I do want to state that, as was mentioned, we did get a list of recommendations. I took the time to look into them, and the frustrating thing is many of them said, oh, we no longer provide that service.
That's correct.
And so, as noted in my email to the council, I indicated which firms on the list that we were provided still offered those services. But what was also interesting is that, as Mr. Tonelli said, if you just say, we want this broadly, then they're not amenable or as amenable to that. They want specifics on what is it that you are interested in having us investigate, so that they can build the proposal out based on what those needs are. So you do want to be specific, and I appreciate Councilmember Rout articulating some of the concerns. So we do understand that you do have to direct. But again, in my email, understanding our limited resources, my recommendation was, as I said here, was to wait until we have an interim town administrator who can take this on, because it does involve the RFP process.
Right.
And it does involve someone who's quarterbacking that process.
Sure.
And for the sake of transparency, it would be best to have that individual, not a member of the council, trying to do RFPs, which is not appropriate anyway, not having someone on staff currently who's already overwhelmed. Let's just get a town administrator in here who can handle that particular process. And so just understanding generally that the range can be from as little, and I say little in air quotes, as what, $20,000, $25,000, depending on what specifically you're asking them to investigate, upwards to closer to 100,000, depending on how in depth you want to go with it. What would be a smart amount to budget for this?
Mayor James, may I respond to you?
About how much to budget?
About what you just stated.
Sure, go ahead, Councilmember
Thank you so
Rout.
much, Mayor James. And so as I was trying to convey, maybe it wasn't clear, but I want to clarify my statement and requesting that money should be added to the audit line item to prepare for that, since we were not prepared and we don't have a town administrator or we do have a Chief Collinson, who's our interim, but that we agreed that would not be something that he would take on. It would be for the new employee. And so in order for an RFP process to take place, we would need to budget. And so since this is budget season, I would like to see some type of dollar amount placed in 6510 audit line item, so that when the town administrator gets here, that can be on that town administrator's to-do list. And so as I asked, directed my question to to Treasurer Tonelli, that would be something that we would like to see in the audit line item in preparation for that service, and to also share in your correspondence. I responded back, and I never got a response back from you for that issue and that item. And so I did, it takes, a conversation. Two people have to have a conversation in order to continue. And it was, there was no response. So therefore, that does not mean, since you don't respond back, that the item is moot. It's just that the other person didn't want to communicate. So now in this budget session, I'm asking if that can be placed in that line item. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. And I'm not even going to waste the public's time with going back and forth over who responded and did not. We are agreeing that we would like to see money allocated. And so that's what the question is. So we don't need any further clarification. Mr. Tonelli, could you please let us know what the appropriate amount is? We're not here to throw stones and make each other look bad. We're here to accomplish the work of the town. So over to you, Mr. Tonelli, so we can move forward.
And I'd welcome it. Yes, and I'd welcome, any audits. So it's, I used to do audits. I enjoy them. I'm one of those weird people that like doing the accounting and the audits. But
So how much will it cost?
not to give away what what I used to bill, but you can figure on probably $125 an hour for a person on site. I say budget 60 hours, and partner level would be at least $185 an hour. And that would be to review and do the report, possibly 20 hours. I just put in $11,000, and that's for a very small scope. And that's like a very narrow scope. Broaden the scope, you broaden the cost, because when you broaden the scope, it's almost like, I won't say exponentially more time, but when you broaden the scope, the workload just goes like this. We have a real narrow scope, you know what you're going in for, you know what you're going to do. It's pretty easy to get into it. And, when the scope broadens, that's where the costs start really, but I like those kind of engagements. So, but it's
Mr. Tonelli, just to be on the safe side, I appreciate you giving us a rough number. Could we do something more along the lines of 25K, just to make sure that if the scope of it needs to be broadened, and of course the council, we can come back and reduce that further, but at least just to make sure, in listening, listing all the things that were raised previously.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you. All right, and if you want to continue on.
Let me make that change. Bank charges. This is it's monthly. It's not just monthly fees for our account, but it's also for other things like money transfers, the amount of money is transferred and the amount of transfers. And also we do online check deposits where the checks are scanned here and sent to the bank. And that's a monthly service as well, because again, we do get quite a few checks in here. And it's just easier because that's another internal control piece there too, because you don't have somebody picking up a bag and going to the bank. So bad debts. This is for the one tax that we bill out and collect, personal property taxes. We'd like to say we get 100% of the taxes collected, but that's never the case. We have businesses open up, shut down, close down, move out of state, move out of county. If they move out of county, we can still get them. If they move out of state, close down, forfeit the charter, there's little that we can do unless it's for a larger amount where we can turn it over to a collection attorney. But we've been very lucky here. I don't have any expense right here for this year. The accounting assistant and I do stay on our business owners to stay timely with their taxes. And we have been very fortunate in a down year too. That's one of the other things I was surprised about. And people are still open, so that's good. But you'll see this probably get expended to the fullest in the next couple months. We have some ones that are just gone. I mean, the businesses are gone, they're forfeited, and they're out of state. And they're smaller amounts, but it's a few smaller amounts. Liability insurance. This is fidelity and this is for the fidelity and crimes coverage and the bonding for myself as well. Membership, minor. Travel, again, I decreased it because I can stay at a place, no cost to the town when I do go to the professional conferences. Debt service, this increased because we did have the tasers and the body cams on the PD side. Well, we're financing them. So it's a financing cost. Even though it's a PD budget item, it's a finance cost, it's a lease cost. So lease costs should be captured in debt service, and debt service is always under finance. It's just the way it is with the audit and everything. So just keep it clean, put it over here, and took the capital outlay out of the police department side. Because I think the tasers and body cams are on a 5-year lease, I believe, Chief, and they are And that's the way I do them because they can just be replaced. If they're damaged, they get replaced. And then at the end, we get an upgrade to the new, turn the old ones in, and roll right back into the next generation. Is that correct, Chief? Thumbs up.
Yes, that's correct.
So the total finance budget, there's an increase, and that is because, again, of the retirement payout of accrued leave and the software contract, and we're going to go ahead and add $25,000 in to the audit line item.
And Mr. Tonelli, I know I probably scared you with this before, but just in terms of software, and I guess Chief Collington, I want to know from you too, is it worth looking at enhancing what we get from ADP and moving more to the electronic timesheet so that people are not having to fill out paper and turn in pieces of paper for their timesheets, or have you already automated that process?
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. We have moved to the electronic timesheets. However, we still print them out for our records, but they're all done now electronically in the new software that we have.
That is good to hear. Little by little, getting more digital. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Tonelli.
Okay, I'd like to go to the public safety budget. And this is, just so we see, let me put something up here real quick. I'm going to share this other screen just so you get some sort of sense. This is public safety is our largest department. You can see it's 65%. It has the most employees. Public Works 17%. They total up to 82% of our budget, and that's why I said we are a service-oriented town. The other 18% go down into the administrative departments. So I just wanted to give you that brief background before we get into the public safety budget, I'm sorry. Get quicker at this, I think. Everybody see this okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Compensation. We have 24 uniformed officers, 7 in communications, 3 in code enforcement, 2 administrative positions. Actually, I'm sorry, that is 3 administrative positions. And we have increases for COLA and merit. And this is assuming 100% fully staffed. Overtime, it's based on 120 hours, but it's really a little bit more scientific than this. Some officers work more than others. Some in some sub-departments work more than others. So it's really based on individual history, but the average is about 120 hours per year. Then you have the associated FICA, health, the Maryland State retirement contribution, and the largest part of our workers' compensation policy is with the public safety department because they are the highest risk. The second highest risk is, of course, public works because they are the ones outside doing the work, interacting with the public. And police, public safety has its own, risk involved as well. And that is through Chesapeake Employers, which is here in Maryland. I try to shop this, and I think I've said in previous meetings, they're about the only game in town for us. And it's not a bad rate what we're getting considering. So we've been fortunate though. we haven't had any major claims. Tuition reimbursement. This is for $20,000. I increased it 100%. You can see we already are at $18,000 for the year. Looking at it, and I think Chief likes to go ahead and push the staff. I think we may need to increase this even more. Just looking at this, Chief, you can help me out. I mean, we're already at $18,000 for tuition reimbursement for the year, and bringing on new officers, you know, I would even suggest bring that up to upwards of maybe $30,000.
Well, I can say that we do, since I've come here, that has been one of my goals, is to get our officers the best training as well as formal education. And I can say today that we have had 2 officers achieve their college degrees since we started pushing for them to become better trained and pursue their college education. So we have 2, and we currently have 2 in school right now pursuing their college degrees.
And that's just tuition reimbursement. We also have professional development down here, but I'll let Chief talk more about that one. That is, I think he did a work session about that about 4 months ago with a training program that we went to. So a lot of that can be done through a training program, but at the same time, I don't want to take away what the police department would need as well, though.
So if I can just add, the officers, staff are not using tuition reimbursement for professional development. Those are 2 separate trainings. One is for furthering education, getting your college degree, and the other one is becoming more proficient in your job duties. So we have sent more officers to de-escalation, mental illness training, taser training, so a number of certifications that they need to make us a better trained organization. So that falls under the professional development. And as you said, Mr. Tonelli, we did push out those hours of training that our staff have attended. And we're going to continue because I think the best officers are the best trained officers, especially in this climate that we're dealing with now. We need to be able to handle calls effectively and proficiently.
Thank you, Chief. And I saw a hand from Councilmember Rout.
Thank you, Mayor James. In reviewing, I knew what a policy was because this was one of the items that I wanted to speak about on this evening, as I do support tuition reimbursement, line item 6110. But in the policy, it says as funds are available. And then just looking at this document, we have budgeted in FY21 $10,000, and we are 81% over the budget. So I'm just a little concerned that even though we are encouraging individuals to go back and obtain degrees and get tuition reimbursement, it has to be budgeted for. And we have not done that. And so that is a very aggressive increase. 100%. I don't think that we've done that at all with any other department. And so I would like to suggest that we roll that back a little bit and meet in the middle, like 15K, because there has to be some type of merit process or something. Yes, I have many degrees, and I've received those as well with tuition reimbursement through my employer, DC government. But if there wasn't money allocated in the budget, I had to make a statement as the reason why that I was more qualified rather than the other person. Having a 4.0 in my doctoral program, I was able to be awarded over my counterpart. That's just an example. And so I'm just saying, that we should really look at that. as leaders so that we are not really fully, using the entire budget to support officers or any civilian staff. We want to make sure that we're good stewards of the town's money. Yield back.
Thank you, Councilmember Rao. And Chief, before I turn it over to you, I have to say we're a small town. And when I look at the amount that was budgeted for FY21, the $4.71 million, and to see actuals at the end of Q3 at 2.7, typically within departments, if you're over in a line item, as long as you're within that department and you're low in other areas, you're able to pull that funding. And so given the fact that we're a smaller agency, we're losing officers to bigger agencies, whether it's Montgomery County, Prince George's County, who can pay more, who offer LEOPS, which gives the officers retirement after, I believe, 25 years, which is just an expensive retirement plan that Bladensburg cannot afford. This is one of the areas that helps to keep officers here if they know we're investing in them. I don't disagree. Yes, it's over budget. But again, within the department, they have many, many dollars that have been saved to help go towards this. So I think I would be more concerned if the entire department was over budget and I saw a 181% expended ratio here. But given that there's so many other line items that are here where there's savings, I don't see a reason why we would want to do that. I know we just lost another officer, last week. Another one is getting ready to leave. With this kind of turnover, it is very difficult to have a strong foundation on the public safety side when we can't compete on other varieties. So I do feel it's important that while we can't invest in LEOPS, as much as officers love that, this is just one way that we can invest in them and hopefully keep them here longer versus the expensive process, which is more than this of bringing someone in, we train them, and then a year later they leave for a better opportunity. But Chief, I did see your hand and want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Mayor James, may I respond?
Let me get Chief in and I'll come back to you if that's okay. Because I think he had a response to you that I'd like you to hear before countering. Chief Collington.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Rao. And I just want to say, and I can see your concern and do understand what you're concerned about seeing the spike. But I would say before, this is one of the biggest concerns that I heard when I came to Bladensburg, that officers were never allowed to go to school, to go for professional development. When you're talking about retaining officers, that's what was a revolving door. Because as the mayor just stated, trying to compete with other agencies that are allowing, that have a budget larger than 10,000. I mean, we know the cost of schools now, and it's astronomical what they're charging. And to have officers develop themselves to be more confident in doing their job, this was told to me a number of times. That, Chief, since you came here, I mean, we were never allowed to, they were always denied the opportunity to better themselves. And I can just see officers how they respond now that they have an opportunity and the town support them and bettering themselves through education, through professional development. So, as I stated, I do understand when you see the concern of the 10,000 now to 18,000, where the budget was low from the beginning because it was never used. And now that it's being utilized, properly, because I look at the requests for tuition reimbursement and, we have conversations and they are good officers that are going to school. And I always take a quote from Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Records. He said, always train your people good enough to leave, but treat them good enough that they don't want to leave. And I thought that was a very profound statement. So when we develop our officers, I'm not really afraid of them leaving because, they're going to get their degrees and leave. I think that they want to be better at doing their job, report writing, investigations on crime scenes. If we want the best production out of our officers, then we should help them achieve further education. And that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Can I shed some light on the numbers real quick too? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chief Collington. I did want to acknowledge Councilmember Rout had her hand up as well. And then Mr. Tinelli will come back to you. Councilmember Rout.
Thank you so much, Chief Collington and Mayor James, for the opportunity to respond. I understand that, and I am a recipient of scholarships for higher attainment. And so I do understand the investment, just putting myself out there as it relates to DC government invested in me. And I would not be standing here with degrees and accolades and opportunities so that I can be able to share my talents and gifts with the town of Bladensburg. But a budget is a budget, and we have to be good stewards of government funding. And so maybe we need to look at a clause that if we reimburse an officer or any other staff member who chooses, I don't want to particularly highlight, just our police department, because there's tuition reimbursement in all of our budgets. So maybe that's just something that we should put a pin in, really to look at. If you have to give us at least 2 years service after we pay, because what we don't want is to be funding or partially funding someone's higher education. Once they get their degree, they then exit and go to a better opportunity. So there has to be some type of buy-in that's not included in the policy. And so that may assist with our rapid turnover and our competitiveness, so that it's fair for our residents who are paying these taxes, and it's fair for the actual employee who is giving, investing in themselves by, highlighting that this is a great opportunity. So I'm not speaking against the opportunity. I am speaking against the amount of money that we're putting in line item 6110. I think it's very aggressive, even though that we were under budgeted. I also, we had a lot of savings because a lot of our overtime was covered in our COVID relief. And so I did have a follow-up question that, as it relates to the savings, are these figures including the savings that we had, or is this pre-post savings? How is the savings depleted? Because even if we had some savings, let's per se, and overtime as we were reimbursed, let's just put out a number like $100,000. If we were reimbursed that amount of overtime, then yes, there would be room in additional line items and budgets, and that's not depicted here. So I would need that big picture so that we can be able to make really good decisions, because we must be good stewards of taxpayers' funds. Go back.
I don't think anyone would disagree that we need to be good stewards of those resources. Thank you for that. Councilmember Lundy, thank you for your patience. I'm coming over to you next. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And so I definitely do agree with my colleague about adding that clause. In fact, that was one of the things I was going to suggest as well. But what I would like to also suggest, and I would hope my colleagues would agree, that, and I love the quote that Acting Town Administrator Chief Collington gave, that was excellent. But I would see us pay that much attention to all of our staff. And so right now we don't have tuition reimbursement across the board in writing. And so I would like to see that for our front office staff, as well as for our public works staff, to add a budget line item for tuition reimbursement for them. They may want to further their education. And then I did my research. Full-time staff are allocated 75% for up to 12 credit hours annually for college tuition reimbursement. And so one figure I saw was $5,250 reimbursement tax-free each year. So I don't know what the amount would be for each department. I could make a suggestion of $7,000 or $5,000. depending on the number of staff, we can divide the number of staff into whatever amount. But if my colleagues have any recommendation, but my only ask for this budget cycle would be that we would allow tuition reimbursement across the board. And it's not reflective for our front office staff personnel or for our Department of Public Works.
Thank you. Thank you for those great points, Councilmember Lundy. So Mr. Tonelli, would you mind, I know this is a living, breathing document, but as part of the notes, could you please add tuition reimbursement for the front office staff? I guess that would be under the town clerk department budget, and then also for Public Works. And Councilmember Lundy, you mentioned two amounts, 5,000 or 7,000. Given for Public Works, there's about 5 individuals there. Not saying everyone would take advantage, but just based on the number, does 7,000 seem okay to you? For now, if we have to come back and make cuts, we can, but are you comfortable with the 7K?
Yes.
Okay.
And for our front office staff?
And for front office, what is your recommendation?
Right now, there are 3. We could do the same.
The same amount?
Correct.
And which departments?
So for town clerk?
Well, let's go back up because town administrator, I did take that out under the town administrator. That wasn't utilized. Professional development was decreased. I think from previous year wasn't utilized. So I brought that down to 5,000. So I could put 5,000 in there. Tuition reimbursement as a placeholder.
I think the amount requested was 7,000, Mr. Tonelli.
Okay, but just to clarify, because we have the town administrator and the town clerk as well.
Yeah, so maybe it's best to go under the town administrator because per the personnel policy, the request does have to be approved anyway. So if the administrator has to approve it, then, you know, they can be the gatekeeper on the budget and keeping up with the actuals versus the budgeted amount.
And 7,000 for there then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor James?
Councilmember Rout, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. I also think that's not comparable. I would recommend 5,000 for the smaller departments. Public Works has more individuals working in that department, so 7,000 could be more appropriate, but 5,000 should be more than enough for the town clerk or town administrator for the use of the town clerk, the receptionist, and the marketing specialist position.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. So just to clarify, so that would it be, if it's under the town administrator's budget, then that 5K would be for actually 4 employees, the receptionist, the marketing person, the town clerk, and the town administrator. So it's 1 FTE off.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. So Mr. Tonelli, did you capture that?
Yeah, and I could go back to the concern about being over budget for the public safety side for tuition reimbursement. We were under budget. Here's my rationale. We were under budget for professional development because we're doing a lot of those trainings in-house. You can see we had $20,000 budget, only spent half of it. And so it was $10,000 savings, $8,000 over in tuition reimbursement. I did increase that 100%, but also decreased professional development down a little bit too to offset it. That was my thinking. And overall, we, if I could just show you overall, we spent 25% of our, can you see the screen? No.
We're still seeing, it's changing now. No problem.
Hold on,
it's changing.
And this was my line of thinking here. This is probably a little bit small. I'm sorry. I can't make this a little bit bigger. Professional development, total $56,000 budgeted. We only spent 25% for the year. So that's why I let the tuition reimbursement go over. And again, as Mayor James said, it's within the Public Safety Department. And I think we're just happy that people are actually using it, you know, so get the interest there. So, and that's why we allow that to go over. So hopefully that, you know.
That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Tonelli. And I do recall after being elected, that was one of the frustrating things that I saw, is that we would go through the budget planning process, allocate professional development dollars and tuition reimbursement for the PD in particular, and to see such low numbers of staff taking advantage of it. So I dare say this is actually a good problem to have: people who bought in, who believe in getting the best training so they can be the best at their job, people who find a leader in Chief Collington who is encouraging them to do that. Because I will tell you, we lost some really good officers between 2017 and 18 because of the leadership at the time just saying, one, I'm not giving you time off to go to training, or I won't even tell you the phrase that a former chief said, but it was just very disheartening. The attitude that was expressed toward professional development and higher learning. So thank you, Mr. Tonelli, for that input, because it does help us to gauge that really we're talking about between the two going from 30,000 to 32,000. So it's just reallocated. And I recall Chief Collington.
We need to increase it as well. I mean, as we said, I think we need to increase this as well. I mean, especially as Chief said, for, you know, for everything changing now. So, you know, I don't want to take away the tools they need to do their job.
Yeah, especially in this climate is definitely
I'm speaking
critical.
for Chief, so I'm sorry,
yeah.
Chief.
And Chief, I'm coming back to you, but I do want to also mention the new training system that you caused the department to shift to. And if you want to just speak to how dynamic that is, but from a cost savings perspective, how much more, you know, financially prudent that is versus the traditional way that we used to have to send away for every single training we had to do. So I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, the new Police One Training Academy has saved us thousands of dollars. If we had to send officers out or staff out for training, lodging, per diem, travel, you know, now we just point and click. The same instructors that teach abroad or teach at these different locations are now right at our fingertips. So we get these the training is recognized by the Maryland Training Police Commission. And again, I've more and more chiefs signing their agencies up to go through Police One, because yes, we go through the Police Academy for in-service. We don't anymore at Bladensburg, because I've had a talk with the president of the Municipal Police Academy, and I told him my focus is for us to have training that's more conducive for the environment of Bladensburg, not just some fill in the time to get 18 hours of certification. We have by far surpassed the 18 hours of training. So that, you know, that's, you know, my take on that. And then the second piece to this is why I'm pushing officers to go back and finish education and get better trained, is because we want to develop leaders within the organization. Like, we shouldn't have to go out to keep bringing in officers to, you know, leaders to lead us. We should be developing our officers. And that's what another thing that, you know, like I tell people, my success is not predicated on what I've done, but those around me. My succession plan when I came here was to bring officers up so we don't have to go out looking for them, because I think we do have good officers here. Why not invest in them and train them and get them ready to take that next step up the leadership ladder? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Collington, for that. Well said. So, Mr. Tonelli, I think we're good with that. I don't see any more hands. Did you want to continue down? Oh, Councilmember Blunt.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay, I listened to what everyone's colleagues and listened to everyone said, and Jocelyn did say the Councilmember Brown, I'm sorry, said it right, that we're not disputing the tuition, the schooling, the education. It's just how and who gets it and why they get it. Are they and if someone get it and leave, then we paid for something that we can't use anyways. So I mean, I agree with both ways because, and I'm listening to everyone talk. I was denied one day for training that I was getting the first time to go to M&L, and I was denied one day. And I'm listening to all the stuff you all saying, but not once am I hearing how I was denied for training one day. But again, I'm just sitting here listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Blunt. And was it Councilmember Lundy or Councilmember Rout that had a hand up? Councilmember Rout.
Yes, thank you, Mayor James. So for the purposes of informational purposes for the public, I think we should note the differences, because if that was the rationale to increase that tuition reimbursement line item 6110 to allow for that overage, just a little notation, because, you know, for a person who's just looking at this document, for a member of the public, they should be able to understand. And so if the town council doesn't even understand, I will hope that, you know, we can justify this. And so after the justification, okay, it's decreased by 40% for the line item 6140. It's not explained. And so understanding that, well, okay, yeah, that's justifiable. And I also wanted to speak to the training system. I had the opportunity to be enrolled in the training system for the police department this past weekend, snooping around. Phenomenal. It is, I thank you, Chief Collington, for that savings that you that you invested in that system, because I was able to, you know, just as a civilian, look at some of the things that are not only offered to the police force, but as civilian employees and leadership opportunities. So thank you so much. And to piggyback on Councilmember Blunt's, with the point she raised, I too was denied one day. I wanted to go down one day ahead of time, and I was denied as well. So it's, you know, sometimes things are approved for others and there's not improved. And I'm a new elected official. I need the training as well so that I can be better and I could be, you know, more productive in this leadership role. And I was denied to go down for that one day because of elevated costs, which was without of my control. So that's, you know, that's just, it's not equal across the board. And so if we're going to be pushing professional development, we need to make sure it's divided amongst all of our towns, because we all can learn and grow. We essentially, this is our first year. COVID happened. That's not our fault that COVID happened. We're seeking thirst and knowledge. I don't know everything. I desire to know a lot, but I want to be able to get training as, you know, in my role as well. I yield back.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. So Mr. Tonelli, looking at the time, it's now 6:52. So I'm thinking realistically, it would probably make the most sense just to conclude for today's session with the public safety, because we do have several more line items to get through. And then if the council is amenable, I think for the next meeting, which we agreed to have on a Saturday, we'll need to jump into public works and then, you know, circle back. Does that work?
Absolutely.
And because I think the other goal of that next meeting is also to get community input. So if we could just wrap up that meeting, you know, we'll start it out getting into public works and then move into public comment. That'll help us accomplish both objectives. But I turn it back over to you.
Okay. Let me pick up some of the we can go through each line item. Uniforms, this is the allowance the public safety members get, and you can see the notes there on the right-hand side. New hires do take, it is a little bit more for the new hires to get them up and going, because they're starting out from square one with new uniforms and ballistic vests versus, and then existing officers receive, you can see the allowances there. Recruitment, as we have more vacancies, recruitment costs increase. But hopefully with professional development and training opportunities, we will keep the turnover down. Employee recognition. This was something over on the mayor and council budget. It hasn't been utilized this year. I think there was $7,000 on the mayor and council budget because of COVID and space restrictions and limitations on gatherings. It hasn't been used, but a police department did have acknowledgement and awards. So I went ahead and put that over here on the PD side. And I did a small budget for them. And there's still a $7,000 budget up there in the mayor and council line item as well. Community events. This should be up for should be up for debates. You know, when we drafted this budget, things were still, you know, we're not going to do anything. Then all of a sudden, everything's lifted. So, you know, we still have a mayor and council budget that we increased the community events to $42,000. And this is just on the public safety side because they're very engaged with their COPS program and just public safety as well. And that's just a few of the events there. And I don't want to speak for Chief on this, but, you know, they're always trying to engage with the public. So, and this is, you know, 2/3 of the budget spent during COVID. So now things are lifted. You know, Chief, I don't know if, you know, you see more engagement activities need to increase this.
Well, even though it was COVID, we still had most of the events that we would normally have. We just had to go about doing it a different way. So the money was still spent like Shop with a Cop. We did it online shopping, but the officers went to the students instead of the students coming to us. So we still did the community events that we normally have each year. So we haven't done anything different. This is probably where we would have been, even if it wasn't COVID at this point.
Gotcha. Telephone, we're looking at this now. This is for the landlines coming in through communications. Now, some of the systems we were looking at, it could be half of this amount if we go to voice over IP system, and that would just be for, and we're waiting to see what the actual quotes are coming in, the contract versus lease versus maintenance will be dependent on what we put here in this, end up here with this line item. But a telephone system, there is I think, $12,000 to $15,000 upfront capital costs, which would go down capital, and then your ongoing maintenance, which would replace the telephone lines here. So once we get this firmed up, this budget, this line item could be brought down, but I don't want to do anything with it right yet. We're still doing our research on that right yet. Wireless communications, this is cell phone allowances. Communications contracts, that is for Motorola. Motorola is an annual contract for our radios and our communications tower. I like to say the equipment there, Chief. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Interoperability is, you can see annual subscription for iNet, which is our broadband backbone through the county, and also for our email hosting. I'm going to pick up some of the larger amounts there. The $3,000 and $2,000 ones are self-explanatory. Computer expense, we did have a number of computers replaced through the COVID relief purchases. I don't know what's going to be allowed in the new grant, but I keep this line item here in case we need update or replace the mobile data terminals in the cars. So there's money there for that. And that's really not enough money there, to tell you the truth. That they should be on a replacement program. So that's something that I think we need to look at.
Mr. Tonelli, typically, how long do those terminals last?
Well, Chief, I think these last ones got donated to us. Were they part of the Fed 10, what's it called? The I want to say 1079 program or
The 1033 program.
1033 program. I'm sorry, 1079 is a tax deduction. Okay.
So yes, several of them were lent to us
Hand-me-downs.
through that program. However, they are reaching their life cycle in terms of upgrading. They can't take it anymore. We up to Windows 10. Any more upgrades, those computers will be useless.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Rout, you had a question?
Thank you, Mayor James. I'm just looking at some of, I don't know by which category this would fit in, but I know in the past we have talked about upgrading, giving our police department the adequate tools to be able to ensure safety for our residents. And so what I don't see in this budget is the shot spotter that I think is very important in capturing where the as it was explained in a previous council meeting, that when there is there's a gun ignited, there would be a satellite that would be able to locate where those shell casings are. I cringe in my soul when I see our officers with flashlights walking around like we're in 1972 looking for shell casings when there is appropriate electronic mechanisms and tools we talk about investments. We need to invest in continue to invest in the safety of our residents and our businesses and our taxpayers. And it's not going to be a end all be all as it relates to ending crime, but it can definitely assist our officers with the available resources so that we can be more efficient with our time. We can do more investigative work to help solve cases. I understand this past weekend, it's unfortunate, we did have a fatality over in Ward 2. And so I think that's an investment that we should consider as a town council, that shot spotter program, in addition to any type of cameras, surveillance cameras in those high traffic areas as it relates to recording. It's been recent dumping. We've also talked about the violence as it relates to shooting. There's tools, and Chief, I don't want to talk for you, but there's tools that we could have to enhance our availability. Now, if the plan is for the tools to be purchased with capital outlay funds for the upcoming COVID, then of course, let's not put it here. Let's, subsequently put it in their COVID plans, but I wanted to bring that up. In addition, when I look at our regular pay for our uniform officers, in the same vein, there are individuals who are living in town who have been recipients of trauma, very traumatic events, whether they have been robbed or they have experienced some type of domestic violence. And so I would really like to see some FTEs, maybe a part-time FTE to start us out, some type of crisis team that can go out and respond to residents' concerns and support them. Maybe a licensed clinician would be at a part-time FTE. So I know Greenbelt has a psychiatric rehabilitation counselors that go out. In addition to some of our other municipalities, they have crisis intervention individuals that are on their staff, embedded in their like a similar, not a CAT team, because we don't only want to have a CAT team, but a similar community response team so that we can meet the needs. And so I'm just a little concerned that we want to be able to use technology to the best to support our officers so that they can provide residents, and then really looking at 2 part-times, one in the afternoon, like in the evening hours, and maybe overnight for a part-time person that could really respond to the needs of residents. I yield back.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. And in light of the unfortunate incident this weekend, I was waiting until we got down into more of the IT and software items because I did also have that same concern. I know you went out to the site on Saturday. I did as well. And I did have an opportunity to talk to Chief about the difference that that technology could have made if we had it operational, and agree with the points that you've made. So my question is, in line with Councilmember Rout, Chief, where would we need to put that? In my mind, I'm thinking, the cameras and so forth would fall under IT support. But again, if we need to budget for the capital first and then come back and the maintenance is done through IT, let us know. But it's at the point where we can't wait any longer. And as was stated earlier, I don't need to waste time repeating, but we know it can't stop everything, but it would be a huge resource for your officers in the community. So I think now's the time. Yes, sir, Mr. Collington, Chief Collington.
Thank you, man, Councilmember Rout. I definitely wholeheartedly agree with everything that you both said. We do need it. It's past time to have them. All last week, I spent with vendors, 2 different vendors, and also I spent time with other departments looking at their surveillance cameras. So I can tell you that it will probably be best because it's going to be a significant price tag, but it's well worth it. But, I just want to, now, don't oversell the shot spotter. Now, the shot spotter wouldn't be able to tell you where shell casings are. Good old-fashioned police search with the flashlight, that's not going to go away because shell casings pop off and go everywhere. So we have to do a good canvas of the area, looking for that evidentiary evidence, those items. But I would definitely agree with you. And I do have the documentation here that I can scan and send to the council, and you can review it. But like I said, all last week, I've been researching, speaking with Mr. Tonelli on the price tag. I thought at this point we would have, our speed monitoring system up. I sent our attorney an email asking for a status on the contract and haven't heard back yet. But I am wholeheartedly on board with getting the technology that we need, because you're right, we do have an obligation, and one of our number one priorities is the sanctity of life, and we want to do everything we can to help reduce these type of incidents from happening. So let me know what you can do to lend your support, and we'll move forward. I have the price tags. One was $42,000, and another one was around $16,000, but it didn't have the capabilities of the one that I would like to get. One that will be mobile, one that has the different cameras, the panoramic cameras, as well as the night vision. So, I can definitely do a presentation at one of the work sessions. So I'll be more than happy to do that. So I'm just waiting on a third vendor to contact me with his quote, and then I'll be able to come before the council and present it.
Yeah, that's great, Chief. And even just, if there's technology so that you don't have to physically go out to the cameras, you can access the information remotely, email it to the state's attorney or, another agency, whatever you have to do without having to physically be on site and pull a video out of a box, it's an investment in the safety of our community. And I'd much rather go the route of a more robust service over something that's just, not going to get the job done. Mr. Tonelli, back over to you.
Yeah, as Chief said, we've been talking about this, and we're hoping, that's why I keep saying we're hoping for more guidance. So there's federal funds coming down. Maybe this could be covered under the infrastructure piece. We're not sure. We're just waiting for concrete language, what we can use for the grant. And that's one of the first things that we should, Chief and I have been talking about this, and obviously it's been brought up before. But as Chief said, it's a price tag. It's a price tag. I mean, but it's worth the safety of our residents. And again, it's more tools in the toolbox that we need to provide public safety. So, question with the budget, I would rather hopefully see if that will fall under those federal funds before we bring that back over here. So that's my suggestion. This is your budget, but that's my suggestion. So hopefully, and we can always revisit this. As I talk about the federal funds, maybe there's things that are qualified under this budget here that can be transferred out that will free up some things that aren't bound by the federal guidelines, and we could do more operationally on this side. That's what we're hoping for. We're not trying to hold anything off. We're just everybody's in just kind of like this holding pattern right now. Ms. Rowdy, I think you're muted. But where was I?
So you left off at 6420.
Yes, computer expense. And again, I'm not sure if, this is something, capital costs that can be covered with the relief funding. I'm not sure about that yet. But as Chief said, I think we have 20 plus probably 3 MDTs, I would say, or is it 15 mobile data terminals roughly?
We have about 18.
Yeah, so it's a pretty good ballpark. Actually, I knew that number because we know that they need to be replaced, and they're probably around, I'd say, close to probably program, Chief. I'd say about 4,000 a piece because they're shielded and they're high impact.
Yes.
So that would be a significant cost, But again, it's tools the officers need, and we are at the end of our useful life and operational life of these computers. So if we're going to do that, I would suggest putting, because of the amount, if it's not covered under the federal funds, to bring that down to the capital outlay, increase the capital outlay. These smaller 1-shot, 2-shot, 3-shot computer expense deals, we can expense those, but when we get into a bulk purchase, that should be done under the capital outlay. But again, give us a little bit to see what's covered under the federal funds. But I don't want to take away the need. The need is there. So we got to do it on one budget or the other. IT support, we've had very good luck with our current IT firm. They're in here weekly and on call, and here other times a day and on call throughout. There's no increase there as of now. But, when we bring more things online, they could, again, broaden that scope of services. So that's something we got to think about as well. Software contract, that's our annual fees. I can see it's mostly for the Barracuda backup, the trend, virus protection. Let's get down to some things that are, you see the insurances have been relatively constant. Let me pick up something. Automated traffic enforcement. That's the one that's offset by the revenues of the $100,000. That's one offset by the revenues projected to be brought in by the traffic enforcement program, $100,000 of expenses. Okay, so it's at least a break even is what I'm showing. I'm not showing like a big surplus here. Any surplus in funds will have to go into a dedicated account that is just for public safety expenditures. Chief talked last week or a couple meetings ago about the hold harmless agreement that we're trying to get into. Hold harmless meaning it's not going to cost the town any more money for a long-term contract, so it's self-sustaining. So the program's self-sustaining, so we're not in the hole, because it's an ongoing cost per traffic enforcement measure that we sign on to, and it's usually a longer lease. I think, Chief, like 3 to 5 years. I think they want 5 years. Is that correct? Is that the last?
Yeah, that's correct. But we decided that we weren't going to let them lock us into a 5-year.
Correct.
We would do 3 years.
So expenses there are to offset the program. Any overages would go into a separate, what's called a separate fund that is tracked, and that would just be used for public safety purchases. Kind of like what we do with the highway user fund. Unspent funds are deferred to future years for future expenditures. And pick up something, the fuel. Good thing is we've been under budget, I believe, just about every year I've been here with this. I mean, if we could, accurately project fuel, we'd all be in the futures market and making a lot of money. So best guess scenario based on previous, current, and how we've been projecting. Vehicle repairs and maintenance, I did decrease this a bit just because our fleet is getting newer. So that's the whole goal. There's larger capital expenditure, and then you're going to see smaller savings with the repairs and maintenance. But the main thing is the amount of downtime is greatly reduced when you have a newer fleet, more efficient, everything. Chief, please jump in on any of this stuff. I'm just talking numbers. I'm just talking history. I mean, this like the back of your hand. So I don't want to talk out of turn, Chief, with your department. Weapons, this is really range time. Maybe a little bit low, but Chief, I mean, can y'all get into the range now?
Yes, we just got accepted to Fort Meade.
Oh,
we've been using Flexi, and we still use Flexi, but Flexi charges us. As always, we try to cut costs where we can, so we try as much as we can to use the Fort Meade range. So that helps us out a lot.
And that's really to cover the ammo. And just because ammo is very expensive right now. Speaking of that, Chief, I don't know if that's a little bit low, because ammo prices are 4 to 5 times what they were last year, at least 4 to 5 times.
Yes, they have drastically increased on ammo, and most departments now, all ammo is on back order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would even suggest picking that up. I would bring this up.
It's bad when other agencies have to call around and try to borrow ammo. It's a tough time. But right now we're okay. Right now. Okay.
I may want to bump this by 5,000 just in case, just because they said it's not going to. From what I've seen, the demand is still high and it's increasing. They just can't keep up with production capacities right now. And even when they do, as Chief said, they're so back ordered on the civilian market, on the public safety market, hunting market, everything. It's impossible to get almost right now. So that drives the prices up. Travel, I did decrease a little bit, but that was, again, 2 months ago when the in-person live conferences and everything else were not going on. But you can see we only spent a fraction of that budget because we talked about the professional development and tuition reimbursement. A lot of professional development is with the police one. But I do want to keep a budget in there for other opportunities as well. Pick up ones that are major. That's about it. Getting down to capital outlay. Have 3 vehicles budgeted, and also I put a little bit in there for handheld regular replacements. That really only covers 2 to 3 at that price point. And again, trying to keep up with the vehicle replacement schedule. This is still light. I mean, it really is. It's not, this really, I think Chief would agree, this should be at 5 to 6 vehicles if we're going to do this right per year. That was my original plan 5 years ago, but it's a significant outlay. And it's something that if we're under budget this year, ending this year, maybe doing a budget transfer to go ahead and keep trying to keep the fleet up and going and modernizing the fleet and everything. Because again, it's all about trying to keep, because the officers are in their vehicles just about all day. And, we got to keep, them properly equipped. Just a thought. So, Chief, I don't know if you want to jump in on that. You probably say 10 to 12, but I'm going down to 5 or 6.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
And you can see the last 2 vehicles we got, with the upgraded graphics, again, looks like we're getting more into the 21st, a quarter way through the 21st century. So they look really good. And that includes the vehicles fully outfitted with emergency equipment, graphics, ready to roll. So really, there's not much change between FY21 and FY22. The 4% increase, that goes back up to, I'm sorry, okay. Mayor, I think Councilmember Route's got a question.
Yes, Councilmember Route.
Thank you, Mayor James. Thank you, Mr. Tonelli. I just want to know, is there going to be across the board? I see we have 2 different versions, as you suggested, Mr. Tonelli, of our police vehicles. So is there across the board, are we going to be redoing all of them? Because I was asked this by one of my Ward 1 residents. It's just a little confusing to see 2 types of. So is that the pleasure of you, Chief Collington, to change them all so that they're all uniform, or we're just going to stick with what we got?
Chief Collington, would you like to respond?
Yes. Now I'm trying to change what? What are you referring to?
Chief, with respect to the graphics on the vehicle, you know how the previous ones have the red, white, and blue, and we're slowly phasing into the new wrap. So the question is the goal to eventually have the new fleet all, wrapped with the newer look versus the red, white, and blue look that we had previously?
Yes, I would like to eventually phase them in,
Okay.
but not all at one time. If you look at some of the older cruisers, you will see that the graphics are fading, chipping.
Yes.
So, if we want to project that professional look on our vehicles for our town, then I think we should look at those first, replacing those. And we don't have to do them all at one time. That was never the plan, to do them all at one time. Just phase them in. In fact, I'm waiting on a quote from the graphic vendor just to give us a quote on what they would charge us to take them off. And plan B will be what would be the price if we take it off, because it's like a heat gun and then it just peels off. So we can save money on that end, then that's what we'll do. And then they'll put the new graphics on at a drastically lower price.
And Chief, just curious, and not to the penny, but just ballpark, if we were able to say phase this in over the first quarter of FY22, what would it cost to just go ahead and have, the old vehicles wrapped with the new look?
So they're charging us right now about $1,100 per vehicle. So when we got the new ones back, we have one place that put in the equipment and another place to put in put the graphics on it. So again, looking at if we work with them to remove it, what would be the cost to have the cruisers redone? And again, just trying to get them. Now that $1,100 is per vehicle, not,
Yeah, we got it. Yeah. Otherwise, we would have said, do it now. Forget FY22.
Yeah, I just want to be clear.
No, we get it. We get it. And then just to clarify, because I know we have one staff member who does that type of work. Would that individual or somebody like that on the staff be the ones to actually help remove it if possible, the cost is right?
To remove them, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. No. I'm with you. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Rao.
I do still have 2 follow-up things. I see we're at the end. I would like to understand the savings that we had as it relates to the overtime that we journal to, and the salaries in the public safety that we journal to the COVID. I would like to see that number compared to these actuals so that we can see if there's room to move around or whatever, because I remember us saying back in December that we would have a significant amount of savings. And so to further understand our capital outlay needs, like wrapping, added FTEs as I suggested, and then I don't think I heard anybody respond to those 2 part-time FTEs. And so I would like to further bring that up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rao. And to the point about the mental health support, I know I was speaking with an officer Friday about that and the value it would bring. But Chief, I think, and we talked about this with the council last year when it was mentioned we should bring in a social services person to help for our residents. Since Prince George's County has those services, would that be an option to partner with the county, and if not them, one of their contracting agencies, to have someone for each shift? So for daytime shift, there's support for the officers when they get those calls that have to do with mental health services or needs. Because as we know, sometimes people call you all rather because they don't know who else to call. So, would that be something that could be looked into, getting some support either from Prince George's County? And we all heard recently our county executive is really expanding the services that they offer as it relates to mental health. And so could we partner with them, knowing that this is being built up? Or as I said, just, what are the options in terms of working with some of their contractors to have around the clock so that, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift, we've got someone here, and then 6 p.m. at night to 6 a.m., we've got someone here supporting our officers and, meeting the needs of the residents.
Mayor James, may I respond before he responds? Because that's not.
I just wanted to hear from Chief Collington, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, Matt, that is a good option. We have signed a tentative MOU with the Prince George's County Crisis Center. There is a nonprofit organization that is under the Prince George's County Crisis Unit that has reached out to municipalities in Prince George's County, and they would like to set up a station here in the facility here, where they would have a computer. Nothing, it doesn't cost the town a dime. The officers go out on a call for domestic violence or anything like that. The person can come here and be put into an intake system, sort of similar to the Unite Us. And we just looked at the different options since it doesn't cost us anything. But I would say on a different note, and relating back to the shooting, it would be very beneficial for us to have social service people on staff, because I would say that as a result of the shooting incident Friday night, Saturday morning, I had 2 officers affected by it. So I had to reach out to the Prince George's County Employee Assistance Program and have our officers connected with some counselors to deal with what they saw. They were young officers on the job. First time they saw it, it had a emotional effect on them. So we have to make sure that we're doing our health and wellness checks on our officers as well. So I am definitely on board with Councilwoman Rout's suggestion, as well as having that extra layer through the Prince George's County Crisis Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for that information. Councilmember Rout.
Thank you, Mayor James. So I just wanted to clarify that there is a difference between social services, crisis, and mental health responses. That's three
Right.
different types of services, and they don't all fall in the same category. And so what I was saying was a licensed clinician on a part-time basis working in our afternoon, evening, and overnight hours to ensure that victims have adequate support, not just social services. Social service needs is like looking at enrollment benefits, looking at how to enroll in different things, subsidies such as, child support and things of that nature. I think we can rely on our excellent relationship that we already have with the Director of Social Services to meet our needs. I actually contacted her today as it relates to our mental health awareness fair that we're having on May 29th. But to have a person on staff to deploy, there are benefits for that. And like what Chief Collington said, is also at our residence, because mental health is very particular. Mental health and substance use, when a person is ready to activate those services, it's like a window that you got to be able to react fast, quick, in a hurry. That's why crisis intervention is a particular service that you have to be able to have. And so I see an added benefit having a crisis intervention person on staff when they're not traditional crisis services, right? So let's say, for instance, let's say Jackie is enrolled in supportive services already with the outpatient mental health clinic here in Prince George's County. But Jackie's outpatient mental health clinic is off at that time. It would be more beneficial for residents when they have a particular breakdown, a crisis or some sort, to be able to activate something to bridge the gap. And so that role is very important. And so it would be at a part-time basis, and Chief Collington would be able to staff that up when there is data to support the need. And so thank you so much, Chief Collington, for supporting my suggestion. Go back.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Rao. And I 100% agree with you. Social services is a very, very different need. That example was just to refer back to the previous budget conversation that we had, where the recommendation was made from staff to get a social services type of position as far as a full-time employee. And the recommendation from the council was, rather than us take on that overhead, while we saw the benefits, to partner with the county. And so I apologize if I was not clear. I was just making that same reference, that rather than us having to take on the overhead, there's so many experts out here who are licensed, who deal with this every single day. And that can be available to support our residents. As Chief Collington stated in the example with the concerns and situation with our young officers last weekend, they're licensed and able to also support our staff after those calls take place as well. So I know you, because of your background, are familiar with contractors who are licensed in that space as well. And so the thought was, just as an additional opportunity, if we don't go the FTE route, to also consider that we could partner with the county to get the crisis intervention services deployed here, so that 24 hours a day, we have that level of support through a contractor, which would be a cost savings to the town rather than going the FTE route. But I definitely appreciate the recommendation that you've provided us with tonight. And Chief Collington, thank you as well for sharing those insights, so we can be thoughtful about making the appropriate allocations for this line item as we move forward, and also for making sure we're providing the proper services for our constituents as well as our staff. So with that, Mr. Tonelli, I think we have made it through all of the police department's budget, but want to just make sure that you noted some of the questions that were given by the council. So when we get back together and have a conversation about public works, if you could provide the follow-up information that was requested tonight, I think we could start there with those questions, getting those answered, and then move into the public works department budget. Is that okay with the council members? Because I know there's going to have to be some work, due diligence done on the part of staff to follow up on the questions that were raised tonight. Just flipping screens here. So Mr. Tonelli, the other item you had on here was the Saturday, June 5th community meeting.
That's what we talked about last week. I assume that's still a go. I think we had consensus for that. And that's going to be our next time we get together for the budget.
Yep. And so if that can, I believe it may have been out in a recent community notification, but if not, could you just please make sure it's included in the one that comes out this week, just to give the public plenty of time to plan to attend. And I know the time isn't here, but I believe we agreed to 9 a.m. You all correct me if I'm wrong. Was it 9 a.m.? Because we were joking, Councilmember Lundy and I were saying we could do it at 7 a.m.
Yeah, I kind of got lost between 9 and 10. So that's
Yes.
why I kept that blank right there. So thank you for catching that. So
No problem.
No, it was
We
9
were
a.m.
joking.
Okay.
I offered to bring everyone
Virtual
coffee, and
donuts.
Councilmember Rout, I think it was, gave me a look over her glasses. So it was like, no, we're not doing 7 a.m. So
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Does that work for everyone, or is 10 better?
Nine's good.
Time is good for me.
Okay, so 9 a.m.
Mhm.
Well, but if we want residents to be there, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So let's go with 10.
Now, are we going to do it here? Going to do it virtual?
Still virtual, and we'll have to just make sure, again, as I said, get the information out early so we can make sure that residents are on and able to give their input.
I have a question, Mayor James.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Lundy.
Thank you. So for the budgets that we had, the departments we have passed by, would it be at that meeting that we would go over if we wanted to increase a budget line item? Or at what meeting would we do that?
Yes, so we'll continue going through the line items next meeting. So if there are further adjustments, could you bring those to that June 5th meeting for discussion?
Thank you.
Sure. All right, so we have Saturday, June 5th at 10 a.m. We did talk last time that the mental health fair is the previous week and June 5th is the rain date. So we'll be flexible if that event is rained out and we need to adjust the date or time for the next budget meeting. And so with that, is there a motion to adjourn tonight's budget work session?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Blunt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Night.